evening, everyone, and welcome to the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York. My name is Victoria Dangle. I'm the Executive Director of the Society, and I'm so happy to see all of you here tonight in support of the art of craftsmanship. For those of you not familiar with the organization, we were founded in 1785 by the skilled craftsmen of New York City, and I recently came across the minutes from 1786, and speaking about those 22 tradesmen, and just to name a few, for the hatters, there was Henry Bicker and Garrett DeBow. For the masons, there was John McComb and Abram Russell. For the coachmakers, Robert Manley. The silversmiths, John Berger. And our first president, a blacksmith, and that was Robert Boyd. The list goes on. And some 228 years later, here we are. Our main mission at the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen is to operate our tuition-free Mechanics Institute, where we have programs for the construction trades, and we also have a program in historic preservation as well. And we operate one of the 3 remaining private libraries in New York City, and this 176-year-old lecture series. The space you're in tonight is the Library of the General Society. It is a membership circulating library. We invite you to become a member of it for as little as $35 for senior citizens, and the collections go back to 1785. So please, we invite you to become a member. Tonight, we gather once more to pay tribute to the art of craftsmanship. The Society is in its 4th season of featuring internationally known artisans who will talk about the intricacies of their specialized crafts. The Artisan Lecture Series promotes the work and art of skilled craftsmen to assist in ensuring their unique knowledge is understood and carried forth for future generations. The series is curated by General Society member Camille Riyard, who brings to the curatorship her wide connections to the artisan community. The General Society extends its most sincere gratitude to the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the McQuestion Companies, Peter Penoyer Architects, Ferguson and Shamamian Architects, and John B. Murray Architects. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Camille Riyard.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you to the General Society. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Camille Riyard. I'm curator of this Artisan Lecture Series, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this wonderful place and introduce you to the lecture series, and also to Mr. Ernie Allen Smith. We can define this lecture series by 4 words: good, beautiful, true, and right. And these 4 words really mark the goal of this lecture series and brings us tonight. Today, our society needs these values more than ever before. Your presence is important and highly appreciated. Ernie Allen Smith will talk about the work of Penn Fletcher, his company, Penn Fletcher, based in Long Island City in Queens, not too far from here. Internationally known for creating custom embroideries for museums, architects, artists, interior designers, theaters, movies, and much more. And I'm sure you've had the chance to have a glimpse of what's waiting in the back of the room, and you'll definitely have more time to look at those wonderful creations after the lecture. And Penn Fletcher is dedicated to creating embroideries using patterns and techniques that have long been forgotten, except by a few. Mr. Smith holds a master's degree from the Hunter's College here in NYC, and both led a career for over 20 years as a professional scenic, costume and lighting designer, as well as a college design professor. We invite you to hold your questions for the Q&A session that's going to follow the presentation, and definitely join us for the reception afterwards. So without further ado, I'm delighted to pass on the floor to Ernest. Thank you, enjoy.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Victoria, Camille, Karen. It's going to be a wonderful evening, I'm sure. And thank you to Andrew Marley and Evelyn Kreshimani from my office, who made this happen. Before I start, I have to say that this public speaking is not exactly what I do on an everyday basis. So I would like to make myself a little more comfortable. There. I spend my day in the workroom. This apron was made for me several years ago. It was a Christmas gift from my staff. Very important. Tonight I'm going to talk about three main things. How I got here, who our clients are, well actually four things. How I got here, who our clients are, who we are, and how we do what we do. So let me start. I'll change the computer. Getting in the Wayback Machine, going back to when I was 8 years old. I lived in a very small town, sweet community, where I had playmates in my block. And that year, my parents decided to move to a rural area where I went to a one-room schoolhouse, had no immediate playmates. My mother was pregnant with my brother, her second child. I was an overactive child, used to having lots of friends around. So to slow me down, she took me to Woolworth's, got me interested in pot holders. Okay? Now I want to tell you, I am a maker of things. So I was prodigious at producing pot holders. And after several months, my mother realized that she couldn't store any more pot holders. All our relatives had all the pot holders they needed, and that I was producing probably 20 to 30 a week just for the fun of it. So I have to tell you that she died last year at the age of 91. She still had pot holders. One of the ones that I particularly remembered making was a trivet out of 6 pot holders woven together. You couldn't hold me back. Well, when she realized that the pot holders was becoming like Bartholomew Cubbins and the hats, she decided to take me back to Woolworth's and inch me over to the next bin, which was embroidery, thinking that she could slow me down a little bit. So sure enough, she got me started on embroidery, and over the next year, I embroidered my way around many pieces, and finally ended up entering one in the county fair where I won a prize, a blue ribbon, and I was 9 years old. And I continued to embroider for a long time, but went on to draw and paint, and then repair cars and tractors, and became interested in machinery, and embroidery faded away. Years later, I became a set, costume, and lighting designer for the theater. And after 20 years of doing that work, I decided that it was time for me to look for a career where I could stay home once in a while, because I was on the road an awful lot that last year. I, in fact, designed 20 shows in my last year as a designer. So I decided to open a company that would provide laces and trims to costume designers who only had Joann's fabric and the rag shop available to them out of town. And I did this for about a year and became bored because I wanted to create something. So I ended up buying a children's applique company. I did not know how to run the machines, but I knew they were special. And I went to Eves Brooks Costumes, where I had rented costumes many times. And I knew in the basement there was an embroidery shop that had machines like this. So I got them to teach me. And Sidney Schroger was my mentor. And Sidney was a marvelous man. He had been in the business for many years. His company, which was Brody Embroidery, he had kind of inherited from his father-in-law. And today I have most of Sidney's machines and probably 5,000 artifacts, samples from Brody Embroidery in our shop. I want to show you that 8-year-old. Here I am. Now, it's very appropriate that I am an avid producer of things. And if you know my name is Ernie Smith. I am an Ernest Smith. I am a serious maker of things. I don't know that my parents knew that when they named me, but it's in my blood. The first area that I'd like to talk about is the customers that we serve. We will do embroidery for anyone who wants to employ us, and we will do it any way you want to pay us. We will do work by hand-guided machine, or by computer machine, or we'll mix them up. Now, many times people come to me and they say, oh, I love handwork. I just have to have handwork. And I say, well, if you came to me and said, I love handwork and I want you to build my house, I would say I can do that. It'll take a long time. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It'd be easier if I could use an electric saw, you know, just a couple tools, you know, now and then to make the work go smoother. And that's essentially what we have in our shop. We have wonderful tools to make the work go more smoothly. But if you want handwork, we'll do handwork. We do, I would say 80% of our business is for interior designers and architects, where we do curtain borders. We do valances along with the curtain borders. This is a fox hunting lodge in Virginia. Here's another valance, another valance. This is a French-style crewel work. This is another valance. Here we did not only the valances, but the curtains and the walls. So it's a real ensuite example of our work. Here we do bed hangings. And in this case, the tester was an antique piece of needlepoint. And the designer wanted some treatment that would complement it but not challenge it. We do headboards. And in this case, actually I should back up and explain what's so special about this. The designer had upholstered the room, a wonderful designer named Michael Simon, and realized that the fabric was a one-way design, and he couldn't get the headboard out of the design. So what we did is we cut the fabric apart and put it back together again, and created a headboard for him that would have a reverse and repeat. And this is a close-up of part of that headboard. We also do linens occasionally. One of the things that you're not seeing in what we do, but we will do it occasionally, is we rarely do jacket backs, hats, logos, polo shirts. There are so many wonderful design companies that do that work today in the United States. We are probably the only company working in this field in the United States. There are competition, other companies doing this in Germany, in India, but not in the United States that I know of. Doesn't mean that there aren't embroiderers in the United States, but doing exactly what we do. We do sofas, pillows, more pillows, simple chairs, lovely chairs, side chairs, dining chairs. There were 24 in this set. Ottomans. Here's an example of work that we did for an architectural firm. It's a restaurant in Vegas, and it is a wall of embroidery. It's a combination of trapunto, hand painting, and chain stitch. I think I skipped one. No? This is a 35-foot continuous piece of embroidery for a circular sushi bar in Vegas. And we do museum work. You will actually see in the back one of Mrs. Vanderbilt's original chair backs from Newport, made in France in about 1880. When the Society of Newport, Preservation Society of Newport, took over the house, Mrs. Vanderbilt never lived with anything that looked like those chairs. So they asked us to reproduce the chairs when they were redoing her bedroom. So we went about it. And the nice thing about what we're doing now is that if you can imagine taking a wagon train from New York to LA, that would be 100% by wagon train. But we were able to use some modern technology so that only 90% of the trip would have been by wagon train. In other words, originally, the piece was 100% done by hand. In our case, it was 90% done by hand. But that first 10% was like taking an airplane from New York to Vegas and then getting on the wagon train. It would still be a long trip, but a heck of a lot shorter. We were able to actually use a computer to do the pattern and the long and short stitch in the corner motifs. All of the ribbon and all the cording and all the cross hatching had to be done by hand. And here is an example of a finished piece. And there is the little room in which my whole summer house would fit inside. And you can see two of our chairs. This is a piece that we just did last week, and it was unusual. I did it because I just love doing things like this. We replaced the cords in the back of this Bugatti chair that is from the turn of the century, and it's quite an unusual piece. This is Maymount in Virginia, where they asked us to redo the embroideries for this swan bed. It's quite a bed. We do work for theater and movies. This is Kate Beckinsale in The Aviator, where she played Ava Gardner. And it was fun to see our work 4 feet high on the screen as she slipped her sleeve up to shave him. Whoop. Here she is again in the scene where he has bugged her bedroom, so she's very angry. This is something that we did for Eiko Ishioka for the Netherlands Opera. She's a marvelous designer who passed away a couple of years ago, and we so enjoyed working with her. This is Mirror Mirror with Julia Roberts, another Eiko production. And this is Enchanted, where we did Dempsey's uniform. The nice thing about doing a movie is that in this case, we had to do a couple uniforms because he gets caught in the rain. And we had to do 6 sleeves because he gets a sword in his sleeve. So we got to do lots of parts. We work for artists. This is Sarah Raybar, a very, very unconventional artist and very wonderful artist. And this is the map of the world seen as bloodstains on a gurney. And it looks like the two continents are fighting. And that's all embroidered and painted that we did in the shop. This is Matthew Barney's work. We did the costumes on the girls, okay? We do religious work. This is St. James Episcopal Church. This is the Altneu Schule in Prague that we recently did, the Ark Curtain, the High Holy Days Ark Curtain, the Torah covers and pillows, the Reader's Desk cover, and the Cantor's Desk cover. And here it is in situ. This synagogue was built in 1270. We do dolls. Here's Madame Alexander. And we do fashion. This is Halston. This was several years ago. We do bridal. This was, if you know, Melody Hobson recently married George Lucas. And this is her bridal outfit. So that's a range of work that we do for different clients. And I'm sure there are even clients, you know, I've left a few out. We did work for the government on embroidering copper wires into parachutes. It was very strange. Now I'd like to introduce you to our staff. This is Evelyn Kreshimani. Evelyn is the associate director of the company and a wonderful designer in her own right. This is Alex Herrera, who's a talented musician and talented artist and a digitizer. He embroiders on the computer. He makes magic that is just incredible. This is Andrew Marley, who's a designer and a co-founder of the company. Joanne Malazzo. Joanne does trim sales and runs the front office with Evelyn. This is Linda Malloy, who works with Evelyn in keeping us in line. This is Matilda Moreo, who is an incredibly talented artist at the hand-guided machine. If you think of an opera singer on stage, to me that's like someone with a needle and thread. And then when you push a piano out on stage, that's a dumb machine. It does nothing. It will not play itself until an artist comes out and plays it. And then magic happens, hopefully. And then when you put a recording device on the side of that piano, that's a computer embroidery machine. The artist comes out, plays it, steps back, pushes a button, and the machine recreates what the artist has done. What I like to say is that just because someone has a piano doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get pretty music. It is the artist, it is Matilda at that machine that is making the magic, not the machine. This is Jayla Peck-Ferolis. She is a hand embroiderer and a crochet beater and finisher. Very talented woman. This is Carmen Rodriguez. Carmen is both a hand-guided embroidery operator and a multi-head embroidery operator, and a great gal. Ivan Sarmiento. Ivan is a specialist not only at repairing the computer machine, but solving all kinds of problems with it and running it. He's really a master at it. This is Shamim Akhtar. Shamim is a very talented hand embroiderer and also runs a computerized machine and is very proud of that. This is Olga Stewart. Olga does hand finishing, hand embroidery. This is Mimi. Mimi is one of the three cats that we have at the shop, two sisters and a brother. This is Penny. And this is Sam. And this is a staff party that we had a couple Christmases ago. A couple of those people are not with us right now. So that is our staff. Now let me go on to talking about how we do things. As I said, we will work any way you're willing to pay us. One of our favorite ways of working is by hand. Now, we're embroiderers. If you came in and said, give me the works, I consider embroidery like jewelry. You would walk out with a huge tiara, a big choker, lots of bracelets, necklaces, and you may have things around your ankles because we love to do the work. So it's almost Zen-like when you're sitting at the frame. We don't often do repairs on antique pieces, but every once in a while one comes along that just is aching to have someone work on it, and we love doing it. Too often times, the silk or base fabric is so shot that the embroidery is in better condition than the piece itself, so we can't do anything to save it. But in this case, the Sons of Italy came to us and asked us if we could repair their banner for the Columbus Day Parade, and we took it on because it was such a sweet project. And it's almost a homage to embroiderers from the past. This is a piece done in 1923 that is brilliantly embroidered. The portrait is done with satin stitch, and it's just exquisite. Then the hand-guided machine. The machines for hand-guided embroidery came about with the Industrial Revolution. When you realize that the Civil War was the first war in which some of the uniforms were made by machine. Not all, some. The vast majority of the uniforms were still sewn by hand. The machine that I have brought with me today, and sitting back there on the table, is a machine that was manufactured 13 years after the Civil War. That machine is 135 years old and still in use. It's a testament to the Industrial Revolution and the fact that in some instances, they didn't know how strong the metal was. Unlike machines today that are made out of stuff that is going to just fall apart in a matter of weeks or months. I have machines that I have bought that are relatively new, that are computerized, that are outmoded when I get them installed, and will be useless within a few years because of computer technology moving so quickly. But that machine will be running hundreds of years from now. And here's Matilda. What we do is we have a vast collection of machines that do different stitches, and we drop them into the base as we need them. So here you see Matilda sitting in front of one of the shelves of machines. Like an orchestra, we all play different instruments. And Matilda is very talented and can operate all of those machines. She's like a one-person orchestra. There are actually 3 of us in the company that operate these machines. Matilda, Carmen, and myself. This is the machine that I brought with me. And you can see it has mother of pearl embedded in the base of the machine. This was an exciting machine when it was new, because it could do by machine what had only been done by hand before. I'm told the first sewing machine was made by a French inventor who invented a machine that would sew 650 stitches a minute. It was a chain stitch machine. The tailors in his community were so outraged, thinking that he was going to put them out of business, that they destroyed his workshop and the machine. So it wasn't until Elias Howe came along with the lock stitch machine and other inventors that the sewing machine really took hold. And that was a few years later. That machine was used to reproduce these chairs for the Fox Theater in Atlanta. These chairs were originally made in 1929. They were a double thread jumbo chain stitch on mohair. And the Fox had been looking for 5 or 6 years to find someone who could do this work. They had sent it to India and were unable to get the work done in India because when you're working on mohair, you have to have a very loose stitch so it rides on top of the mohair and doesn't sink into the pile. And not only that, you're using a double thread. That old machine came to the rescue. And it was already 50 years old when the Fox Theater was new. This is a braiding machine. And I think that afterwards, if you go back and you can touch the machine, you won't hurt it. There's a handle that turns the head. And the marvelous thing about the man Bonaz, who invented these machines, is that he came up with a mechanism that would allow you to sew in 360 degrees. You actually steer the machine from underneath with a joystick. This is what's called a 3-thread machine, or an LG machine. It actually has a bobbin that wraps around the needle and makes a cord as it sews. This is what's called an invisible machine, or an FB machine. It will also put down sequin schlong, tape, cord. In this case, it's set up for rat tail. Now, all these black machines that I've been showing you are from about 1900. Our newest machine is from 1960 in this family. Most of the machines are from the early 1900s. But then we have the computerized machines. They're extraordinary in what they can do. They're very efficient because they can do things in multiples. With a hand-guided machine, you have one operator doing one item at a time. With this, you can have 12 things going at once, doing the same design, or can come up with different combinations of that. Here's Shamim standing at 2 of the machines. These are border machines that will do long lengths. Most embroiderers, mom and pop stores, work with hoops. We work with enormous frames that allow us to do long lengths of fabric. We will work on things that are tiny and gem-like to very complicated hand-embroidered things. Now, this is one that had me stumped for a while when we were doing the prototypes. It is based on a kind of an American Indian motif. And we got the fabric and we're embroidering it, and we were trying to figure out if we were doing a stage curtain, because it was big. And we have to have shop space in our shop in order to stretch out and do the finishing work on pieces like this. And it wasn't until the interior designer sent us a photograph of the installation that we realized that this was quite some place in Colorado. It looked out on the mountains, and it was very rustic, and that's why the Indian motif kind of thing worked with the decor. So now let me talk a little bit about how we do things. Clients come in, sometimes they have a very specific idea of what they want. They will bring a picture, they will bring a drawing, they will bring... One woman brought in a purse that had a little flower on it that was embroidered in Sweden. And from that, we actually extracted the flower and created a whole bedroom curtain embroidery for her because it's what she loved. Out of our initial meeting with the client, the first thing that I try to come up with is a visual image. You can talk all you want about embroidery, but until it's on paper, I can't bid it. I have to have something concrete in order to bid on a job. And nothing is by the yard. We price by the project, because no 2 projects will be identical. If we were doing production work, after the 1,000th one, we would know how much it really cost. But when we're doing custom work, it's always a crapshoot as to how much this is really going to take, how much time it's really going to take, what is the real price. And oftentimes we don't know until the job is done what the price should have been. That's hair-raising. But Evelyn is phenomenal at understanding because she watches us all. So we start with a sketch, and we will do that sketch at a big conference table in our conference room with the client there, and we will hand draw and throw things away, and we hand pencils out to everyone in the room to participate. Once we have a clear idea of what the job is and have given an estimate, we go into hand drawing the patterns. I know it's a computer age, but for me, hand drawing has so much more life. So we draw full scale. If the work is going to be done by hand or hand-guided machines, we will perforate a stencil. And we will actually transfer the pattern onto the fabric with wet wax or powder. This is a perforating machine from about 1910. A friend of mine saw one in the LA Museum in an exhibit, and he came back and he said, "You're running a museum." This is a handheld perforator that is electric. The other one was originally treadle and was converted to electric, where this was probably from 1940s and still works. We cherish it. We hope it doesn't break. And you actually guide it around the paper, and it makes little holes in the paper. Here's Andrew actually doing some stamping with a perforated pattern. The wax we're using in this case glows in the dark or under black light. We use that wax when it is on light-colored fabric so that it won't show under normal conditions. So on the top, you see the canister of wax, which then it is, the sponge is dipped in a cleaning fluid to melt the wax and make it liquid. It is pushed through the pattern and leaves its imprint. We love doing complicated work. This is a headboard. We've used this also on a curtain, for curtains and for some smaller projects. Then the hand-guided work. One of the joys that I have is I love to tinker. I love to repair machines. Evelyn knows if I am let on my own devices, I will be back there taking a machine apart every day and putting it back together again. The machines are so marvelously made. As I say, they didn't know how strong the metal was. So rarely does a part break. And I have lots of extra machines in the event that that happens. And occasionally when one does get damaged, I'll have to have it made by a tool and die maker to copy the part. And you know, that'll go on for years and years and years. The other avenue, if we don't perforate the pattern, is that it will go to Alex, who's incredibly talented at the computer. He comes from a long line of embroiderers. His mother and aunt and uncle were all embroiderers. And he will scan an image that we've drawn up, and he will then actually embroider it on the computer. And he can embroider stitch for stitch. Sometimes we've asked him to do needlepoint on the computer. And there's no quick way for him to do it except just like he would do it by hand. And he sticks to it. He's wonderful, but man, don't go near him while he's doing it. So he sends the files over to the computerized machines, where they go to a central computer and are then distributed to the right machine. The next step after the work is embroidered, whether it goes through the hand embroidery route or the hand-guided route or the computerized route or all three, is to go to finishing, where we take great pains in restoring the fabric. You have to understand that when you're working on a curtain panel that is maybe 20 feet wide by 12 feet high, it's going to get wrinkled because you're holding it in your lap. You're holding this massive amount of fabric in your lap, or you're pulling it through machines. So we restore the fabric, first by hand. In this case, the gals are pressing it. But we will, here Olga is inspecting one of the pieces. And you can see it's framed up and stretched because stretching and steaming the fabric really helps restore it to its original shape. And one of the last steps is a trial hang, where we actually, if they're not too high, hang them up in our shop. Our shop ceilings are 11.6, and we've had curtains that we've not been able to hang up that are 14 feet high. And we've done, like the Grand Drape for the Seattle Opera House, that was 40 feet high. We didn't get to hang that one up. But it's marvelous to see the work hanging because we get a sense of what it might look like in the room. You know, we're at a disadvantage. Our trade is such that the work goes to another workroom. The other workroom finishes it and installs it and gets to see it. We rarely get to see our work installed. When we do a show house or a designer is kind enough to send us a picture, it's a real pleasure for us to see the work that we do. All different kinds of wonderful things. The last step, which is I started doing a few years ago, is that we take a picture of all the pieces before they're shipped. I once had a costume shop call me and screaming that I'd only delivered 11 of the 12 Ginger Rogers dresses. And I said, Maria, you only sent 11. She said, I sent 12. I said, you sent 11. Maria went screaming into the shop and found that one had been stuffed under one of her tables and hadn't gotten to us, and called back with an apology. So, you know, it's smart to take a picture. We did the work. We're shipping it because we're putting it out there into space. We don't know what's going to happen. So that's kind of how we do things. It's a pretty simple process. It really hasn't changed in probably 600 years. I always like to think of embroidery as starting out when two cave people were sitting there with skins on their laps, lacing them together, and one noticed that the other stitches were a little nicer. And that's kind of the beginning of embroidery. Because it's true, you know, even though embroidery is the embellishment of fabric with thread. And sometimes just beautiful, regular stitching on a garment pleases me, because it's really extraordinary to see craftsmanship like that. Of course, if you were leaving it up to me, you would have a long train of embroidery. I think that's all I have to say. I'd be happy to take any questions and enjoy your comments. Thank you.